Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I've got another rare Norlin Era treat for you guys today. I've been looking for this guitar for so long, and it happened to show up on Reverb one night, and I was like, oh man, $7,000. But then I looked at the condition. Oh, mint condition? What? I was just looking for one of these in like okay enough shape, or just any of them really, because this is a very, very rare obscure model that nobody ever talks about, ever. Like, you've never heard of this one, I'm pretty darn confident. And on my last Tosca video, I received a nice comment from somebody that they love it when I do these types of videos. And I totally agree. I love doing these rare Norlin Era guitar videos as well. The sad part is, though, it's just the viewership is not as great as when I document brand new guitars because more people are searching for those. But it's still important to document these weird oddity guitars too, because it serves a different type of fan base. The guys that like the vintage guitars, like to learn about things that are new. So even though my channel is more so focused on brand new guitars at this point in time, it's always good to go back to my favorite era of Gibson and treat you guys. And you also have to remember, I've documented almost every single limited edition model, so there's just a few that I have to wait years and years and years for them to show up. But today, we're going to learn the tale of the Les Paul Black Beauty 82. A very, very... let's just look at it. I don't have to keep telling you how rare it is. Let's take a look. This thing is supposed to be mint condition. And, I mean, it's looking pretty clean so far. We still have the plastic on the pick guard, which is always something I love. Let's get all this stuff out of here, and then we'll start telling you all about this really rare model. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this beauty. So first thing you might notice, Black Beauty 82 is on the truss rod cover. But if you actually look at this thing, the technical term of Black Beauty does not refer to any black Les Paul ever, like some guys do think. In a technical sense, it only refers to the original black Les Paul customs. Some guys draw the line that it has to be the 3 pickup version that looks fantastic, you know, late 50s. Some guys are as adamant as only the original staple pickup customs with the mahogany top should be called Black Beauties. But, I mean, technically, Black Beauty's in the title of this one, so despite it being a standard, it is a Black Beauty. So let's go ahead and talk over this thing real briefly. So this was birthed in 1982, hence the title Black Beauty 82. And around this time, there were 2 other guitars that shared a very similar name, the Standard 82s and the Standard 83s, corresponding to each year. And essentially, what those guitars were like these very, very beautiful kind of 59 reissue-esque guitars. You have to remember, the prehistorics, as they call them, the historics made before the custom shop came out in late 93, did not start until 1983. That's when Gibson started to produce those more reissue-like guitars. So those predate that, and was basically Kalamazoo's best attempt at trying to show up the Nashville shop for their poor attempt at a 59 reissue called the Heritage 80 series. You had the Heritage 80 Standard and the Heritage 80 Elite. And those Standard 82s and 83s are gorgeous guitars. They're kind of hard to find, though, because if somebody takes the truss rod cover off of it, it's a little bit hard to ID them, but they generally have explosive tops on them. Like, they are quite fantastic. And that's eventually how I found out about the Black Beauty 82, because, you know, I was researching those, and I just happened to find one of these things. And it's like, oh, it's kind of like that, but it's a black Les Paul standard. But at the same time, I mean, look at this. We actually have the custom multiply binding on the front, so it's kind of a custom in that attribute. But you flip it over to the back and there's no binding, so it's more so like a standard. I'll have to measure it, but it's kind of like a studio custom before the studio customs existed. I'm wondering if this model was kind of like a precursor prototype to the studio customs. I mean, to me right now, the body seems regular standard thickness, so it's not a thin alder body like the studio customs, but it's got that same kind of vibe going on here. You've got the gold hardware on this, pickups, Nashville style bridge, so not ABR1 like the 82, 83 standards. Regular tailpiece here. But on top of the black finish, the Black Beauty customs of the 50s had these style of knobs. And those things have aged quite beautifully on this guitar, and we've even got the thumb bleeders. Nice. So that's kind of why it got the Black Beauty name, because you got the binding, you've got the special knobs, the gold hardware, and if you look at your fretboard here, it's ebony. Now, I talked to a guy who used to work at Gibson during this time, Mr. Randy Leonard. He comes up quite a bit in my videos, and I asked him if he had any of these in his ledgers, and he had one he could find. So here's what Randy had in his database. Yep, there's my guitar right there, 0024. Apparently there was another one produced earlier in that day that did not get a secondary serial number on it. So that's at least 2 of them. And then he noted there was a Les Paul Custom made in 1983 that was noted as a Black Beauty. But who knows what that really is. But he really doesn't remember this model too well, so he's thinking there really couldn't have been that many of them made, because he would have remembered it. But I asked him, did this thing get birthed because the Heritage 80 series came to an end? And remember, as I was telling you, the Elites had the ebony fretboard with the trapezoid inlays. I'm guessing this is just like a runoff model of they had some extra fretboards, so they decided just to slap it on here. Now, I was initially thinking like in the photos that these were mother of pearl trapezoid inlays, but they're not. They're the normal acrylic stuff that you would find on standards of this era. But you do have the fret nib, so that's kind of what makes this interesting. But then you go up here and, okay, it's not a bound headstock, so that's more so standard territory. So to cut things short, this is a Les Paul standard with a couple of custom attributes called a fancy name, the Black Beauty 80. But now that I have this in person, I don't think I've ever seen that before. Very lightly stamped, just like the Candy Apple Red standards that they did, or the Heritage 80 series, or even the 2550s. There's a very faint stamp, 0024 in here. So there's at least 25 of these guys made. And these models are just slightly before Gibson really started to use those custom shop edition and original decals. So if this would have been made like a year later, it likely would have had one of those on the backside of the headstock. Before then, they just kind of did those limited edition numbers. So that's kind of a first take on this. We're going to obviously tear this thing apart on the workbench because I'm really curious. Did they take the time to put a mahogany top on this? Like, what is their definition of a Black Beauty in 1982? I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's probably a maple top. Hopefully we'll be able to see. It's got a pretty nice belly on it. Kind of hard to show you guys. So it's got that carve to it. So it wouldn't even surprise me if this is just a straight up runoff body from the Heritage 80 series that they just put a different type of binding on. I truly believe at this point in time, that's probably what these things were. So yeah, lucky me. I found one in pretty much mint condition. I mean, you're going to notice it even still has the original diamond posi lock strap lock buttons on here. It's a shame it doesn't have the flip out winding tuners. I mean, it's almost time for that, but not quite. But this thing is in pretty phenomenal condition. Like, it's got some scratches, but I'm not really seeing any big nicks and dings. The story that the dealer told me was this was in a collection of a famous musician, and he's kind of downsizing stuff right now or something. So they threw it up on Reverb for $7,000. Thankfully, I was able to talk him down to $6,500, and I was happy with that. I consider this a personal collection guitar. You can't find another one of these in this type of condition. So let's go ahead, throw this on the workbench, take an individual look at its parts and specs, and then get to a playing demo of the Black Beauty 82. All right, my friends, everything checks out. This is a near mint condition Black Beauty 82. Let's see what it's made out of. So first off, we've got the 2 humbuckers with perfect gold on them. That's a nice touch. Okay, maybe there's a little bit, just a hair, kind of worn down right here, but that maintains a fantastic appearance. As you would expect in this era, we have Tim Shaw PAFs in here that date to 1981. But then our bridge pickup here actually dates to 1982, and a lot of the stamp is just kind of worn off, or it didn't get stamped very good at the factory. So Tim Shaw's exactly what I thought we would find in here. These pickups are worth quite a bit on their own. Let's take a look inside our cavities. So we can see the mahogany body right here. This is constructed with a short neck tenon because That's just what they did back in the day. Long neck tendons weren't a thing until the custom shop opened. Not even the prehistoric reissues got that. And then we can also see the mahogany body right here. Very clean routes. Now you might be curious, does this have a maple top? 40-some years ago, somebody saved this guitar by having just a little bit of this masking tape over top of it right here, so we can see there is just a little bit of maple right there. You can also see where the maple joins to the mahogany body right there, but it's nice to actually be able to see it without the finish. So yes, indeed, this is a maple top. So we're not going after something super special with a mahogany top. That would have made this model so much cooler though, because they just don't do mahogany tops in this era. At least not on Les Pauls. Let's get our pickup readings. 7.12 k ohms in the bridge. Our neck position is 7.41, so that's about what you would normally expect in this era, and 3.63 in the middle position. So everything's looking good with those. Now our bridge and tailpiece setup. It is a Nashville style bridge. You can see it right here. The gold is phenomenal on this one. And on the back, you can see made in Germany right there on the side, which tells us it is a Schaller made part, and that's what they used at this time, so that's what we're looking for. And here's what the back side of the bridge on this one looks like. Everything's looking pretty good. Let's take a second to gloss over the top. Pretty much the only thing wrong with this one is, it's a black finish. It's gonna show light picking scratches, polishing swirls and whatnot. There's no physical possible way to get a perfect black finish. It's always gonna show something. So it might not be the perfect example, but you're gonna be hard pressed to ever see a cleaner one than this. But man, I love those knobs, especially since they've aged just enough to look cool, so they don't stand out as being brand new. But what's kind of cool about these is the fact that Gibson really didn't use this on too many models at this point in time. Like the prehistorics and the Heritage 80s, they had one that was this style, but is the gold and ambered ones, not just straight up black. And let me just tell you, those thumb bleeders are extra pointy on these. But as far as our pickguard area, you don't even have an impression under there. I was the first one to take that pickguard off. It had all the dust and everything under there. Now, you could be a romantic and leave it there, but this is my own personal collection guitar. I get to make the call, and I decided I don't want that under there. So you got to be careful when you're buying collectible guitars. Some unscrupulous dealers will just find new old stock pickguards and put them on to make you think that the whole rest of the guitar is mint condition. You always got to be careful, but this one, it is indeed the way it's supposed to be. It's got the lettering going the right way. If it goes up and down, it's a modern day pickguard. And I once had a guitar that was just like this. Occasionally, these really clean ones do pop up. And I sold it to a guy, and he took it off. The pickguard underneath it was actually ruined by the protective covering. I still don't know why he did that. I was so upset because I ended up buying that guitar back from him later on. But just as a word of advice, if you don't want that on there and you buy a collectible guitar and you decide to play it a bit, just get a different pickguard, swap them out, because you're not going to like what's underneath there anyways. And this one was created in 1982, so that is like right when weight relieving happens. That's right when mahogany necks start to come back. That's when the volute starts to disappear. So at this point, do I know if this has 9-hole weight relief or not? I don't. Sorry. There's no way to know until I buy an expensive x-ray machine. But we can see how thick the body might be. So it looks like 1.94 inches. And 1.94 down here, so slightly thinner than a Les Paul standard. I mean, it varies depending on what year, but generally they're about 2 inches. So I mean, if you include the belly of the beast here, yeah, it's 2 inches. But at the contoured edges, it's a little under that. So yeah, regular Les Paul standard style right there. But moving on to the neck. Not sure what the neck is made out of. I'm going to guess mahogany, and it's 3 pieces mahogany. You can see the seam lines on the back, so we'll have to dig a little bit deeper there. But here you can get a close-up of that beautiful ebony fretboard, 22 medium jumbo frets, and take a look at those inlays. They've got a lot of figuring to them, but that's pretty standard for what you'd find on the Les Paul standards of this era. So far, I am leaning towards the fact that this very well might be a Heritage 80 that has just been sprayed in black and given custom binding. Or it's kind of like those candy apple red ones, that they just use the same top carve for them. Or maybe there's something more that we don't know. But it looks like we got that standard 12-inch radius, 24 3/4 inch scale length, so nothing's funny there. with a nut measuring 1.68 inches and increases to 2.04 by the 12th. First fret neck depth 0.84 and 0.95 by the 12th. Here it is at the first fret and the 12th fret. It's a pretty standard style 60s neck from this era, not big by any means. But now moving on to the headstock. I got stabbed by this top E string while polishing it. This darn guitar. But anyways, we've got the Les Paul model silkscreen on the headstock there and the Gibson mother of pearl logo. No binding or anything like that on the top. The only thing special here is our truss rod cover. The truss rod itself looks like it's in fantastic shape, but unfortunately there's no like chipped paint or anything like that, so we could see through to the mahogany wood grain if that is indeed what it is. What you're seeing here is just vintage buffing compound. But here is that beautiful truss rod cover. Just reads Black Beauty 82. And that seems to be screen printed on it, so if you were to scratch really good, that probably could come off. So if you ever find a guitar similarly spec'd and it's not a studio custom, you'd be able to tell because this has a mother of pearl logo versus those ones not. Now you know what it is. Now we move on to the back side. What do we got going on in here? Well, it's just the regular stuff of the era. That pot's all covered over with solder, so we can't read its date code, but this one looks like it dates to the 49th week of 1980. This is the 35th week of 1981, and the same thing on that one. Very common that these two will match and these two will match, not necessarily all four, but you can find that. But this did have one of those shielding tin covers over top of it. That's how they grounded guitars off in this era. They didn't do a traditional wire down here. But whenever you're looking inside an early 80s Gibson guitar, it's always important to look for these little initials here. It doesn't necessarily add value, but it adds specialness. So there was a father and son team working at Gibson at this point in time, and they would put their initials on these guitars if they had worked on them at all. Now, they weren't necessarily the builders, but this is the father. His name is Floyd Leonard, 1982. I always thought it was a JL. I would see these in Spotlight specials all the time, but Randy Leonard, I actually have his email. I talk to him all the time if I have some questions, because he ledgered every single guitar that he ever worked on within Gibson, and that has been an invaluable tool. But his signature looks like this. It's RFL. You would normally find it over here. Now his dad, he would actually have a star ranking after that. So if you have like 1 or 2 stars, you know you have a fantastic top. Now this guitar, it's black, so you can't really grade the top. But that's what that stands for. And I see a BB right there, probably standing for Black Beauty. So very cool. I'm always happy when I see at least one of the father-son team in here. It's even better when you have both though. But peculiarly enough, this one does have a ground wire, which sometimes you'll also see. So this is just one of those ones that has the shielding cover and a regular grounding one. So technically, if you don't like this big clunky thing in here, you could take it off and you should be okay. But now I'm kind of upset. Some lazy guy who probably tore this guitar apart to verify it at one point in time ruined it. So this only needs 3 screws, right? They didn't line it up with the original ones, and they probably had a power drill and just been zoop, 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 never even noticed. I noticed taking this one out, it was kind of drilled crooked. It's a good thing nothing ever cracked. Does it really hurt the value of the guitar? No, it's just sad that it had to happen. Also, at the same time of the careless guy that checked this over at one point in time, I think he might have swapped the screws out because they're not gold, and some of them are longer than others, and generally they're all the same size. So that's a bit of a bummer too. So there you go. There's always got to be a gremlin in every single guitar. You just got to dig deep to find it. But the back here is in pretty good shape. I didn't see any like major nicks or dings, just some light scratches and scuffs. I did notice like there's something underneath the paint. Right there, it rises above, or maybe it just didn't get sanded down flush in that area. And you do have the gold parts on the side. You've got the diamond posi lock strap buttons, which are essentially precursors to a strap lock system. They're pretty cool. Installed correctly. This is how they left the factory. This way, it's correct. That always bugs me about the Adam Jones reissues. They have them installed so the way they don't work. All right, and now the neck. So now that I've seen those lines running up and down the neck, I've never seen a mahogany walnut mahogany neck before. So this must be a maple walnut maple 5-piece maple neck in simpler terms. That's crazy. I don't know if they're all like this either because there's so little documentation and such you can't actually see it. That's going to be a tough one. So where can you guys see this? Looks about like right here. You see the line right here and then another line right there. I mean, this is clear as day in person, but it's kind of hard to show you, but I think you get the idea. Condition wise, it looks like somebody had this on a stand or something at one point in time. It kind of slightly marred the finish right there in a straight line. Nothing too bad. But here we can see the serial number 81582591, made in USA, then very lightly stamped in there 0024. So there's at least 24 of them out there. How many do I really think there are? Probably about 50 would be my guess, but I don't have any evidence to back it up. I've honestly, I think only seen like 2 or 3 of these things online. So of the at least 24 that we know of right now, how many of them haven't been headstock repaired, chewed up, beaten up, burnt down in fires? I don't know. But also take note, there's no volute on this guy. So kind of a special spec, but again, we're also at that year where that all started to get transitioned out. Now, as far as the edges of the guitar, you do have the custom binding, as I was telling you about earlier, and it is the thick binding in the cutaway. Maple cap is not exposed on this one. Other than that, nothing too fancy on this guy. Under blacklight, everything is glowing beautifully on this thing. No signs of touch-ups on the top. You even get the cool glowing knobs on this one. A little bit on the pickguard, and nothing really stands out. Moving up the neck to the headstock, everything's looking good here, which is surprising. Everything's looking... Whoa. Something happened there. Is that like that on the other side? No, it is not. Might need to talk to the store about that. Other than that, there's just a small area of wear like on the corner right here. That's why we do the blacklight test. You never know what you're gonna find, and black finishes can hide many different sins. But as long as the sin's not on the back of the headstock right here, you're okay. That is a really good touch-up job. I mean, just looking at this, it doesn't stand out, but if you know that it's there, you can just barely see that outline. So this must have got dinged or something at one point in time that broke the finish. And you can still see like a small evidence of it right there, where it didn't get completely covered back over. Yeah. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Uh-oh. Man, I mean, I even got this from a pretty reputable dealer. I mean, it just shows you not every shop does the blacklight test. I mean, there's ways to get around the blacklight test, but it's a very good way to quickly check if this, you know, I would have never guessed this mint condition thing would have that on the side. But this is one of those things where the guitar's so rare, they'd probably just tell me to send it back for a full refund, and then I'm out the guitar, so I guess I'll just have to live with it. And it's a chunky one, 10 pounds, 10 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. All right, let's go ahead and run through the tones of the Black Beauty 82. We'll start with that neck pickup here. Some simple chords to start. Now we'll try that middle position, same thing. Now onto the bridge. Alright, so it's pretty standard Tim Shaw's. You got a nice deep neck pickup on these guys. And the bridge pickup. I've never never been a big fan of Tim Shaw bridges. I mean, they're good, but I always think the neck pickup outshines them. In that middle position. So I hope that gives you some idea of the clean tones. Now let's kick that distortion in. Bridge pickups always come to life with a little bit of distortion, though. Now that we know all about the Black Beauty 82, this very, very rare guitar, what are my final thoughts on this thing? This example, it's not the best. It feels kind of stiff to play. Maybe it needs a good proper setup, or maybe it's just not one of the good ones. Maybe there's a reason it's in the condition that it is yet today. It's more of a collector's piece, but doesn't mean it wasn't a good guitar. It just wasn't the best guitar that I've ever played. But the condition is quite phenomenal here for a collector. I'm still kind of upset about this video. I was hoping we could uncover all the secrets, but now I'm left with more questions than answers. Like, why on earth does this guitar have a 5-piece neck? It makes no sense. So, hey, if anybody else owns a Black Beauty 82, I would love to see some more detailed photos of these, because who knows, maybe these are just runoff guitars and they're like all different. Because in this era, there wasn't another guitar that I can think of that is a 5-piecer that doesn't have the volute that came from a Les Paul. Like, maybe they just shaved the volute off. I really don't know. Should everybody rush out and buy one of these? Nah, probably not. Leave these ones to the collectors, or if you find one that's a little bit more played in, then you can play it out. It's got some interesting specs. It's essentially just a studio custom, except for it's a full-bodied one. And it's got the beautiful mother-of-pearl Gibson logo. So if you love the look of this and you want something similar, check out a studio custom. I guess the only other thing this guy has over top of it are the trapezoid inlays instead of the dots. But to sum up everything I've said, it's kind of like a Les Paul Standard, but it's got the custom binding on the front, gold hardware, and a strange ebony fretboard with a 5-piece maple neck, I guess. What a quirky guitar. I love it. But anyways, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed learning about this rare and obscure model. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. As always, if you're interested in being the next owner of one of these demo guitars, you can check them out on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. There's some links in the description.